No, the terrible truth of the matter is that wars sometimes have to be fought. In the United States, you fought two huge wars, the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, in order to deliver yourselves into something resembling freedom. In the United Kingdom, we had a civil war that lasted more than a decade, which is what made us a democracy.
Right, but that's not really the question, right?
But
This guy is one of the worst guests Joe Rogan's ever had. He's trying to defend Israel by comparing the bombings in Gaza to the American Civil War. But Joe isn't buying it at all. Watch how he disarms him.
The only way to do it is to bomb the places where the civilians are because the bad people are there as well. And I know what you're saying about the condemnation of Israel, and I agree to a certain extent, but could you imagine? I mean, we're essentially in some sort of a strange conflict with drug cartels in Mexico. Now imagine if that didn't exist 20 years ago. I never heard about it, but now we hear about it every day. What if 20 years from now it becomes even more intense? And what if some drug cartels in a gang sneak across the border and kill a bunch of Americans just because they hate America? If we bombed Mexico into the Stone Age, do you know how upset people would be? If we bombed factories because the cartels had embedded themselves in the factories and we killed tens of thousands of innocent workers who were just poor people, do you know how upset people would be? They'd be very upset. It just hasn't happened before. So this unique condemnation is because we're seeing it. We're seeing the consequences of this. And when people look at what's happening to Gaza, like, how does that come back?
Yeah.
There's nothing left. It's just getting obliterated. And what does that mean? What does that mean for the future? What does it mean to the people that live there? What is being done to help them? Is it a death sentence to tens of thousands of people or 1 million people? Like, what is going to happen in 2, 3, 4 years? What if this keeps going on and on?
But sometimes a moral judgment has to be made.
It's just funny. Joe lays it out clear, saying bombing civilians is not acceptable. And the first thing this guy says is moral judgment. Like morality only matters when it serves his side. Then he does the same routine. What Hamas did was very bad, very evil. Sure, but when it comes to Israel's actions, suddenly it's just collateral damage. The numbers aren't even close. Israel has done 100 times worse, and yet if we don't agree with him, we're the ones who are morally wrong.
And I think in relation to the Israel-Hamas war, the way I see it is that this was an assault on ordinary civilians by a barbaric army. And I don't accept the idea that they are purposely targeting civilians or that they kill those aid workers on purpose. I just don't think that's true. So what Israel is doing...
Did you notice that? The moment Joe tries to stop him on the aid workers topic, he jumps in to cut him off. He literally admits Israel targeted aid workers, but then in the same breath claims he doesn't believe they're targeting civilians. Like, how does that even make sense?
There is collateral damage to Israel's just pursuit of Hamas.
It just gets on my nerves how these people can say such horrible things with complete calmness. It's like they've lost their humanity.
The idea that killing innocents in order to get to the bad people is morally superior. You kind of have to make the judgment that you care about them less than you care about your people. Because if you could imagine a scenario where a Jewish hospital had Hamas in its basement and they made the decision to bomb the Jewish hospital and kill all the Jews inside of it just to get to the 40 or 50 Hamas guys that are there, no one would say that that's okay. So if you're saying that these people who have no say in how their culture is run are less valuable in terms of like what you care about, what happens to these people that had nothing to do with it. We care about the people in Israel. They had nothing. They got parachuted in, killed, and at a rave. It's horrifying. But it's also horrifying for the people that have zero say in how their society is run. They're young, and they're women and children, and they're getting bombed into oblivion because where they are is where Hamas is. If those were Jews,
whose fault is that?
But it's definitely Hamas's fault.
Yeah.
But the problem is deciding whose fault doesn't make it feel better for the people that feel it's a moral outrage that you're destroying tens of thousands of innocent lives. And who knows how many people are wounded permanently, and who knows how many people are displaced. Their life will never be the same again. And it's all happening because the moral decision is that in order to get rid of these bad people, you're willing to kill these innocent people that are not us.
But the truth of the matter
But isn't that true? Because if they were Jews, if there was 500 Jews and 3 Hamas guys, who would be cool with killing all those innocent Jews to get to the Hamas people?
But
Look at him stuttering. The moment Joe says something that destroys his argument, he jumps in right away, because he has to make Israel look good at whatever cost. It's honestly funny the mental gymnastics these people pull just to make the devil look good. They'll press every button, twist every word, anything to defend it.
what you're saying is technically correct, but I can think of no war in history, and it is important to talk about the history of conflict.
Yes.
I can think of no war in history where there haven't been civilian casualties in pursuit either of an unjust cause, like the pursuit of Saddam Hussein, apparently because he was responsible for 9/11, bullshit, built on lies, built on a tissue of misinformation, and hundreds of thousands of people died and suffered as a consequence of that. So wars are either fought for unjust purposes and civilians die as a consequence.
But that's kind of a straw man, because there is that, but then there's also the vast majority of people who look at it as a horrific loss of life of innocent people. And just to chalk it off to the horrors of war, it's like that's the only way to do it? Is this the only way to do it, to bomb civilians because Hamas embeds itself in civilians? I don't know. I'm not an expert on war tactics.
But I don't think it's the only way to do it. You're right to say that if one were just to throw one's hands in the air and say, it's war, what do you expect? That's not a good response.
Right.
That's not a good justification for what's happening. But what I'm saying is that...
Bro, he was literally saying that from the very beginning. This is war. What do you expect? And now here he is, contradicting himself. This is exactly what I meant when I said they'll say whatever is necessary to make Israel look good.
Beyond what I'm saying is, I think, twofold. The horrors of war attend every war. That's a given. Every war is horrible and sick-making and hellish. That's a given, I think. But then there's another issue, which is the question of why a war is being fought. Is it being fought for criminal reasons and wrong reasons? And I think there are many examples of that, spearheaded both by your country and mine over the past 100 years. Unjust wars that led to unjust deaths. Are there also wars that are just and that are worth fighting? Yes. The thing is, war is awful, but John Stuart Mill, a great liberal thinker from the 1800s, he made the point that war is an ugly thing, but it's not the ugliest thing. The lack of patriotic feeling or the lack of a belief that anything is worth a war is worse. And I do think we're seeing that in the West now, this revulsion at war. We are in a very luxurious position in the West, especially younger generations. They've never had to fight for anything. They've never faced an existential threat from a neighboring army that wants to destroy both your state and your religion and your people. They've never faced that level of threat. And what's more, from an army that hides in ordinary streets, in crowded communities, amongst ordinary people. So there's this kind of luxurious moralism, I find, in some of the condemnation of Israel, coming from young people in Europe who've never had to fight for anything, never had to fight to maintain their existence, never had to fight against an existential threat to their entire way of life. What's more, these young people in Europe, their great-grandfathers shoved Jews into ovens. And then they have the absolute gall to say to Israel and to the Jewish state, well, why do you need your own country? They need their own country because of what we did to them 80 years ago.
First he says, war is bad, get over it. Then suddenly they'll use any excuse. Your great-grandfather did something bad to them, so now they can do bad things too. Make sure to subscribe to our channel for more.